Professor Anita Corbett from Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's only 5:30 in Atlanta. So we're really grateful to Anita for getting out of bed this morning at this kind of hour and to join us here in Limerick for this fantastic session on mentoring. So Anita is a cell biologist. She's the professor of biology at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, and she's also the 2018 Nature Award winner for mentoring in science. We're absolutely delighted to have her with us today. And reading about Anita's approach to mentoring is really, really inspiring. And Anita focuses on the importance of mentors to be really purposeful in how they mentor and in the support that they give to people. And I've read a little bit about, the focus on helping people to build skills and also to dispel doubt and how that resonates with everybody, I think, when it comes to mentoring and that role of mentoring in dispelling doubt in our colleagues across the board. And as you know, we're really trying to work across the University of Limerick to build this culture of mentoring where people have these conversations in a very deliberate way, in a way that, I suppose comes into all the conversations that we have with colleagues, and in a way that's really supportive across the board. So Anita, we're absolutely delighted to have you with us today. Thanks so much for joining. And I'm going to hand over to you.
Great. I really appreciate the invitation to be here. Let me get my slides up. Hopefully I did this a minute ago. Hopefully it will work again. So do they look okay? Slides good? Yes. Okay, awesome. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to talk with you guys about something that I care very deeply about, which is mentoring and the process of mentoring. And I think, what Allison just said about the attitude you guys are trying to build at the university really resonates with me, because I think in almost any conversation we're in, we're often playing either the role of a mentor or a mentee, depending on who we're speaking with and, depending on the situation. And so I think it's really valuable to be always thinking about how we can make those conversations more valuable. And I think this is something that, at least for me, just developed over time. And Allison mentioned that I'm a professor of biology. I also have a role as Senior Associate Dean for Research at Emory University. And that puts me in a role to mentor a number of different types of people across the university, which is a little bit different than the traditional role that I also play, which is running my research lab and working with trainees in my lab. And then I've listed here a couple of other programs that I'm sort of formally involved with. And so again, in all those roles, it makes me think about how we have conversations with people and how we can support people. And then also how we can, again, learn from other people, because we should always, throughout our life, be both mentors and mentees. And so I have a number of slides to go through. At a few points, I'd like to kind of stop and let you guys reflect on some of the things we say. It's a little bit easier to do this in a, physical room full of people. Maybe I'll get an invitation at some point to come to Limerick, but we'll try and make it work. So, and if anybody has any questions or wants to ask anything along the way, please feel free to interrupt. And I'll definitely leave some time at the end for questions, comments, thoughts other people have on this topic, because we all have different perspectives and we all bring valuable perspectives to the topic. And so I like to start by just when I first started thinking about this, I like to think, where did the term mentor come from? And it arises from Homer's Odyssey. And mentor was a trusted friend, and Ulysses left this trusted friend in the care of his household. And when he departed for the Trojan War. And it's a little ironic, because it turns out mentor really wasn't that great of a guy when Odysseus left his family in his charge, and he was looking to provide some mentoring for his son Telemachus, but he actually really didn't do a great job. So it's kind of ironic that this word mentor has survived, and so he basically ended up kind of not being a great mentor to Telemachus. So I find it ironic that that's what mentoring is named for. So hopefully we can all strive to be better do a better job. And if we look at the National Academy of Sciences from the US definition of mentorship, it's a professional working alliance in which individuals work together over time to support the personal and professional growth, development, and success of the relational partners through the provision of career and psychosocial support. I think that second part is really important, particularly in this day and age. And I know you guys have been going through Research Week. We're all overburdened, we're all burnt out. And so making sure that we continue to support people's sort of mental and physical well-being is critically important. And effective mentoring has been linked to enhanced self-efficacy, persistence, research productivity, career satisfaction, enhanced recruitment of individuals from underrepresented groups into, biomedical and other research-related career pathways. And so all of the things that we obviously would want to achieve can benefit from this effective mentoring. And then, just this point I make throughout your career, you are likely both a mentor and a mentee. And I like to putting these presentations together always makes me reflect on the people who've been really important to me along my career path. And so multiple mentors throughout your career are critical. And I've sort of just illustrated several of the mentors that have been key to me along my way. And sort of on the left are teachers and professors at different stages of my career that have been really critical, important to me. And I think that's always something we can each reflect on is, at each step along our path, who's really influenced us. I go all the way back to my high school teacher of chemistry, who really had the influence and instilled in me sort of confidence that I could be a scientist. She recognized and put me on a team of the science tool team. And I think before that, I was just someone sitting in the class, and she sort of saw that in me. And I think as mentors, we can do that to people, right? We can give them that confidence and help them see themselves in a certain role. And then on the right are a number of my current mentors, so a number of peer mentors, Dr. Dunham, Dr. Tansey, who are female colleagues of mine that I really appreciate and respect. That I'm fortunate that the chair of my department is a great mentor to me, and then just other colleagues that I've met along the way. And of course, we all learn along the way from the people that are essentially mentoring up to us. So I've learned every time from trainees, from individuals that I've worked with, about what works as a style and how to work with different individuals. Because I think it's one of the really key things about mentoring is that you can have all sorts of symposia and discussions about it, but in the end, it has to be personal, right? So for each individual, there are aspects of mentoring that will work to support them. And you can't just have sort of a one size fits all approach that's going to work for every single person, because every single person is an individual and has individual needs. I like to also just think about the impact of mentoring, and we'll talk about this a little bit more at the end of this. Obviously, it was incredibly rewarding to get this award from Nature for mentoring. Mentoring is not something that is typically the thing that's not the metric that's often being looked at by, for promotion or for financial raises and things like that. And so I always like to think about sort of the impact and the quality of mentoring. And so a few years ago, actually, when Dr. Roger Roulette, who was my undergraduate teacher in chemistry and research mentor, retired, I wrote a short thing about the impact of a mentor and doing the numbers, right? So in 1984, oops, my slides just went away. Are you guys seeing the screen share, or are you seeing the whole slide?
No, we're seeing the slide, and you're just flicking back to where you were. There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Anita.
But does the slide fill the whole screen, or is it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You're on slideshow. Yeah.
Okay. So if I do the math on this, that this particular mentor along the way, right? In 1984, I graduated from my college. I went to graduate school to pursue a PhD. There was this is a relatively small college. There was one other student in my lab at the time. He went to get an MD to become a medical doctor. And so if we do a conservative calculation that my mentor at this time, Dr. Roulette, had similar numbers of trainees, he was there for 35 years. So that means he directly mentored 35 students who went on to become doctors of philosophy, 35 who went on to become medical doctors. And then if we conservatively estimate that each of these trainees has in turn trained an average of 10 students, because of course everyone we mentor then goes on to mentor other individuals. My 26th student just defended their PhD, so our conservative, then this one individual is already responsible for 700 people who populate the fields of science and medicine. So I think we can never underestimate the value of mentoring one person, because then they go on to mentor others. And so it's really, really sort of impactful to think about that. And so then the rewards of mentoring for me are illustrated here by some of the trainees that I've mentored along the way. And here you can see the people circled in yellow standing with the labs that they're now working together with. And so again, you can feel the buildup, the impact of your mentoring of individuals, which then grows to others. And I think this is really important to think about, because when we do mentoring well, it takes a lot of time and energy. It takes a lot of effort. And again, it's not something that is necessarily specifically recognized. It's not usually what, people are looking at when they're looking at metrics of our accomplishments. So sometimes we just have to sort of reflect and appreciate our impact in this way. And so back to the National Academy definition. And so I think this important thing is this working alliance, right? So the idea that it takes work to be a good mentor, and that you really do need to identify those individuals that you can form an alliance. And again, this could go both ways, right? You could be a mentor or a mentee. And honestly, in any given relationship, you could switch between being a mentor and a mentee, right? Because one person may have expertise in something and end up mentoring someone, and then that other person may end up having expertise in something else. So that relationship is very flexible. It could be very dynamic. And so what does effective mentorship involve? And again, I'm using this report that was brought up from our national academies. And this was a report on the science of effective mentorship in STEM. And so really, we can look at it and think about these different aspects of it. So support functions. Effective mentorship provides psychosocial and career support, as well as networking opportunities tailored to the needs, interests, and priorities of the mentees. So again, it's always going to take work, and support is more than just professional. It really does bring in this consideration for people as individuals, and the fact that they obviously have needs beyond just the professional needs. Trust. Clearly, this is really important when you build a relationship and you have mentors and mentees who work together, because both sides of this need to feel comfortable, right? If you're struggling, you need to feel able to share that with someone. And that only really comes with trust. You're only going to really help if you trust in that relationship. And I think self-reflection, and again, I'll try and do that a couple times as we're having this discussion this morning. So really critical and honest self-reflection at multiple stages of the mentorship process. And again, I would say this is for both individuals, right? As a mentee, you need to think about, am I really asking what I need? Am I getting what I need? And as a mentor, I think we need to think about, as the support actually giving this person what they need, and also, is it providing the support more broadly than just a specific thing that's helping them with their career? Are we taking that into consideration? Expectations. So effective mentorship involves mentors, right, really being explicit about what they've created the safe space for mentees to make their expectations explicit. So it goes back to trust, obviously, that you need to be able to feel comfortable saying, here's exactly what I need from you, or here's where I'm struggling, and here's where I need help. And then education. So, mentorship is a learned skill. I think mentorship education influences mentor and mentee attitude, self-efficacy, and behaviors. Most of us learn our mentoring, which is certainly true for me, just over time, right? We start out young and excited and probably make some mistakes along the way, and hopefully we learn from those mistakes. And again, we build those skills, but it certainly doesn't mean we're perfect, and we'll continue to make mistakes, and hopefully we just have a growth mindset. So when we make mistakes, we can, improve our approaches. So all of this sounds like a lot, right? If you're going to be a mentor to someone, you have to do all this stuff. So it's a lot of work. And I think this is something that Allison mentioned as well. Mentorship in itself is something that is very, very time consuming if done well. It has to be very purposeful. And so one of the things I really like to emphasize, and I think this is critically important, is the fact that we should all be seeking multiple mentors, right? And we can play the role of being a mentor in sort of a specific area to someone. And so depending on what one is looking for someone from a mentor, you can go to different people for those different types of mentoring, right? So if you're just looking for some motivation, maybe you just, talk to one of your peers and say, oh gosh, I'm just really burnt out. I'm incredibly tired. I just need someone to kind of give me a pep talk and maybe go get a cup of coffee with me and tell me, like, you can do it, you can work through it. Maybe you need some specific coaching in a particular area. And so there's lots of ways to think about using sounds like a bad word, but identifying individuals who can provide different pieces of mentoring to you. And again, often we'll have peer mentors. We might have people who are in sort of formal oversight roles. The person that we report to may or may not to be a mentor, depending on our relationship with that individual. Other people that are sort of at the same level as we are, who may have more expertise in one thing or another. So we can look for mentors all over, and many of us might have mentors who fall outside of our workspace. Someone who is a friend from outside, someone that you go to the gym with, who provides sort of that mental energy. Lots of opportunities to identify people. And so I mentioned this a little bit earlier to Allison, but one of the mentoring sort of structures that I like is it's called a Thrive Mosaic. So basically this idea of you can identify and you can label specific roles for these mentors. And this Thrive Mentoring Mosaic from Robin Chapman is something that I like to think about, and I'll go through these really just briefly. Just the fact that multiple mentors can bring different things to the table. Having multiple mentors decreases the demand on a single mentor and leverages the specific strengths of a mentor. And one person cannot be all things to anyone, right? It's too much work. We have to take care of ourselves. And so in this Thrive Mentoring Mosaic, basically, Dr. Chapman has identified sort of these specific roles that different folks can play, and we can maybe reflect and think about our lives and think about the individuals who might fall into those roles for us. And so if we go through those just quickly, you can have sort of associates. I tend to call those near peers, right? These can be mutual accountability partners, right? Somebody that you say, okay, I'm going to get this done today, or I'm going to get this done by the end of the week. So I'm going to check in with you and make sure you get it done. Setting goals, meeting deadlines, completing projects, all of these kinds of things. So you can set, and they can help you also set realistic goals, right? So they can say, hey, I think you said you're going to get that done by the end of the week, but this is really something that's going to take more like a month. Then mentors is kind of what I've been more generally talking about. And it depends on your role, what your, daily job looks like, but they can focus on your overall career trajectory, progress in specific areas of development. So these are people that really work with you and bring you more deeply into your area. And again, this is sort of more generally, I think, what most of us think about when we think of a mentor. And then we can think of things that are around sponsorship. So she divides those into connectors and advocates. So a connector would be someone who, connects you to someone, right? You walk into a room and someone says, "Oh, I've been meaning to introduce you to, so and so who's in charge of this thing that I know you've been interested in getting involved in." And so the lots of ways that could work. This helps build your network, right? Helps you identify opportunities. This is particularly key for people who might feel less of an identity in whatever space they're in. So this could be true sometimes, unfortunately, still for women, also for people from, underrepresented groups. And then advocates kind of fall into the same role, but I think those are more, to me, the folks that might, put your name forward for something, right? Oh, I've really been thinking, that we do this and this person would be a good person. And so they both kind of help build your network, but maybe in slightly different ways. And then kind of more specifically, these two, coaches and targeted training, I would say those are for something where you have identified a skill that you need. Maybe you need that skill to move to the next career level. Maybe you have just identified, a new area that you want to get involved in, and you realize that you need specific skills to do that. One of the ones I recently realized that if I was ever going to keep up my students with my students, I would have to learn to be able to program in R, which is like the simplest thing you can do with a computer nowadays. Was not simple for me, but I had to just take a class and figure out how to do this because I just wasn't even able to communicate with my students because I didn't understand the language they were using. So that was like targeted training. I realized that I needed it to sort of stay abreast of my field. And so I think those relate more to specific skills that you identify that you need to build, and that either come through like actually identifying a coach. There's more and more examples of people identifying either life coaches or coaches to help them with specific things, or this targeted training. And, particularly in the post-COVID age, you can probably sign up and take a class in almost anything you want to take a class in, online. And so those sort of structured mentoring and structured approaches to mentoring can be helpful for us as individuals, but I think it also gives us some tools to give to other people who may come to us and, need some help. And you can think about how to identify what it is that they're really asking for and what might be helpful to those individuals. And so, again, just back to the idea that, these multiple mentors are important. But again, I have circled the word mentor here because that really is the sort of bigger role and the more conventional thing I think we think about when we're thinking about mentoring. And so I want to just kind of reflect back on a couple of these things, the expectations, right? So effective mentorship involves mentors stating explicitly what is expected and the creation of that safe space for mentees to make their expectations explicit. So right on both sides. I think that's something that often, at least when we're talking with the graduate students who are sort of our most traditional mentees, that's something where I think we really fall down because they have expectations of their mentors, but often as mentees, they don't reflect and think about what is a requirement for me, right? What commitment am I making? And what do I need to do to make sure that this relationship is going to be helpful and valuable? And so this is where if we were sitting in a room together, I would say, what do you expect from a mentor? So I'll stop talking for just a minute and give you guys just a few minutes to reflect on, if you were building a relationship, like what kind of things might you expect from a mentor? And then I have a slide where I've collected some of these answers over the years. So since we're not all in the same room, it's not quite as easy to do it. And I think the very first thing on the list is the thing that is most critical, which is listen, right? So in all these relationships, communication is key, right? And making things explicit. And then I won't go through all of them, but I've collected sort of some comments that people have made over the years when I've talked to some different people, either just individually or led some discussions about this, so being reliable, setting up meetings, being open to questions and taking time to think about them carefully. I think that goes back to listen, be patient because I'm learning new things. Initially be directive, but eventually let me, do the thing that I'm trying to learn by myself. Might mean that I make mistakes, but that's okay, right? Being sympathetic. Challenge and encourage me. I mean, I think this is something that is super important, and I say it to my trainees all the time, is that, if you like me all the time, I'm probably not doing my job as a mentor, because if I'm doing a good job as a mentor, I probably should be pushing you outside your comfort zone. And, there should be times when you're, swearing at me behind my back because I'm making you do something you're not comfortable with. But then there's teaching me basic things, encourage me to take care of my physical and mental well-being. I think that is something that I see in university settings. And Allison, you were just mentioning something about, or maybe Michelle was mentioning something about leadership before, which is so many things on our plates nowadays. We don't get to go home and take our work hat off because our work follows us home with the computer. So I think these things, like just making sure people are taking some time for themselves, are so important. And then there's some more specific things on the right about really, would be very specific to the particular project someone was doing. I also got things about helping me network with other researchers in the group or disciplines. That kind of falls back to some of those sponsorship points that I raised before, and be willing to discuss future career goals. Then there's the next question, and this is always what kind of floors our mentees often when we bring it up, is what are the expectations for the mentee? And so we could either think about, if we were in a mentoring relationship, what you would expect from a mentee, or if you happen, in a place where you take on the role of a mentee, what do you think are the expectations? So like I said, when we often we'll do this exercise sometimes with our students, and they have lots and lots of things that they expect from the mentor. But when we flip to this slide, a lot of times the students, just kind of are floored. They're like, oh, I didn't really realize I had to bring anything to the table. But of course, for the relationships to work, both parties need to bring important, things to the table. And so, not surprisingly, the very first thing that comes to the top, and many of the things are the same thing, right? So we listen, communication, always the key, and just like mentors, mentees need to sort of be present and available for meetings. We expect our mentees to, work hard and give effort, manage time efficiently, all these kind of standard things that we would expect in a relationship. And especially as a mentor, if you're committing a lot of time and energy to help someone, to provide them with some feedback on a project they may have put together, we really expect them to respect our time and respect the energy and effort, and that they really take it to heart and try to integrate it into their way of thinking. And so a lot of these comments sort of have to do with that point. And so when I return and think about my multiple mentors, I really have mentors that have done all of these things along the way for me. And I really appreciate, especially at this stage of my career, my peer mentors. And I think that's really important, as well as, like I said, those individuals who have been mentoring up, right? Trainees, grad students, postdocs, other people I work with in my role as senior associate dean, and learning from these people. Particularly for me, I took on this new administrative role just last fall. And so I've been learning along the way from all sorts of individuals who have way more agency in this area than I do, even though, I've been at the university and been a professor for a long time. And so really, we each have to develop our own sort of personal mentoring style, right? It's learned through interactions with our own mentors along the way. And we learn positive things that we want to model in our own mentoring style from our mentors. We probably also have mentoring experiments that we vow not to incorporate into our own style, right? We've all been in a situation where someone does something, you think, oh gosh, I'm never going to do that to anyone that I work with. I would never say something like that. That is not, what I want to do. And so this is where I usually say, turn to your neighbor, which is harder to do when you're on teams, and discuss, something positive and something negative. I always make sure people don't incorporate names into particularly the negative ones. I guess positive would be okay. You would want to do or emulate in your mentoring style. And I mean, it'd be perfectly fine if anybody wants to take a minute and think about this and then unmute and offer us something positive or negative in mentoring. Well, I don't know how excited you guys are about doing that on Teams, but I'd be perfectly happy to hear a few things from you guys if anyone wants to share. Positive, negative, anything? I got a hand up. Yay, Jill.
Here, I'll put my camera on just to add to the friendliness. Hi, thanks very much. I'm enjoying the session. This was actually before I was an academic many years ago, but I had a manager who worked as a mentor, and I was only covering a maternity leave, so I didn't work there very long, but it was a great management moment as much as a mentoring one. But when I wasn't sure what to do, because I was in a role that was kind of quite a stretch for me, he would kind of give me the scenario and put me on the spot, but in a safe place. So he'd ask me what I would do, and then I would spell it out, knowing that I was feeling very vulnerable because I'd only been working with him for a short time. But it was still, if I messed up, it was still in a safe place. I wasn't, because it was in an HR department and there was a very militant union, and it was like he didn't want to mess up kind of thing. So it was kind of what you mentioned before, but always liking, like, I didn't like the experience, but I really knew it was good for me.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, right? Because they're basically putting you on the spot, but in a way that if you can learn from your choice, right? And I think, and that takes time and energy, right? On his part, he had to be able to come up with those scenarios and take the time to work with you, right? So, and I don't know how long ago that was, but think about it. You still reflect back on that and think, oh, that was really a good strategy, right? Anyone else have anything they want to share? All right, well, we could probably all come up with some negative ones and think of some scenarios where someone has said something to us, or we've heard someone say something to someone else and just thought, oh gosh, I am never, ever going to do that. And I think for me, along my career, I have two, I won't name names because I've been showing pictures, but I had one mentor along my training that was super positive, super supportive, always building me up. And then I had another mentor who, in a way that was constructive, but not, was basically the opposite. So like, if I need someone, even nowadays, I'm actually trying to set up a call with my positive mentor, because he said, oh, I just want to check in with you and see how you're doing. And I know when I talk to him, he's going to say like, oh gosh, you're doing great. I saw this paper. I saw this other thing that you did. Someone just came and turned on the lights. So we'll see how the breakfast buffet goes. Having a really positive experience. And this other mentor, it was valuable. I definitely learned from them, but they were far, far more critical, right? And even nowadays, if I meet with them, they'll say like, yeah, but what are you doing that's really interesting? And so I think there's value, obviously, in having different people that contribute in different ways. And yeah, thanks a lot, Jill, for being willing to share one of the positive examples. And again, I think back to the mentors that I've had, and I try to actually have a balance between those two individuals, the person who was like super positive all the time and really supportive, and the person who really pushed me a lot and forced me out of my comfort zone, and honestly was probably a little bit overly critical some of the time. And balance that. We do need both. So Jill shared a do. I kind of I didn't share a specific do not, but again, I think those are the do nots might be the easiest things that we often reflect on and think, oh gosh, I don't want to do that to my mentees. And so back to the sort of list of what is effective mentorship involved, I think the education piece, right? So it is a learned skill, and mentorship education influences mentor and mentee attitudes, self-efficacy, and behavior. So first of all, you guys are all here listening to someone talk about mentoring, so that's great. Really valuable for me too, because I got to go back and reflect and think about this as I put this presentation together. So I really, really appreciate the opportunity to do it, to be honest, because it causes me to reflect. And I want to just touch the last few minutes, and then we can ask, if people have questions or comments on another sort of idea, which is the idea that academic mentorship really needs a more scientific approach. So all of us have offices that look at, safety or human subjects. And essentially this group of scientists, who are people that I really admire a lot, came out with a short sort of statement piece that suggested that our university should also have offices specifically dedicated to mentoring. And I think this is a really interesting idea. And it depends on the context, but essentially it would be really great to have such a thing. And so the high points of their sort of report were, adopting a collaborative model, supporting innovation and evidence-based practices, providing incentives and accountability. So I keep going back to this, right? Incentivizing mentoring. It really tends to be something that people who care about it and who get positive reinforcement from mentoring work hard at it, and some other people don't. And really, mentorship is a science. So decades of research have gone into learning how to make mentorship successful and productive, but we really haven't used it in the same way. So there's not as much institutional support, commitment to best practices and innovation, accountability and oversights and rewards and recognition. So again, really integrating this into the academic, weaving it into the cloth of university processes. And so the idea, like I said, you have an environmental safety office or whatever you guys call it over in the UK, actually having an office dedicated to mentoring, to training people, to overseeing problems when they arise in mentoring could really change the way we approach mentoring. And this is what this article suggests. So they make some bold statements and recommendations, and pointing out that mentorship is central to the research or scholarly ecosystem, should be treated as such. It takes skill, time, effort, resources, dedicated individuals who should be trained, recognized, and valued. And so rather than it being something that just kind of is inherently part of what we do, and there tend to be a subset of people on which the mentoring work falls, it would be really great to have a mentoring office on campus, have mentor training, which is required just as biosafety or ethics. It should be evaluated and rewarded for promotions, annual raises, and things like that. Obviously, this is difficult because how do you measure mentoring? So the metrics will be challenging. And then if we think about the impact of negative mentoring, so negative mentorship experiences do happen more frequently and can be more detrimental to individuals who already sort of struggle or don't see themselves in a particular space. So, individuals of color, or people who are Black or Indigenous, or researchers who are from, different gender identities or have some sort of disability. And so these negative experiences then could have a downstream effect of affecting the overall diversity of our community. And we all know that more diverse groups have more creative ideas and better approaches to solving problems. And so this is really something that is incredibly important and potentially dangerous to not have the proper sort of inclusive and culturally aware mentoring practices that are not trivial, right? Really takes some time and energy to become adept at. And so again, I go back to kind of my rewards of mentoring and thinking about the groups that my trainees are training, and it really is rewarding, and hopefully they have learned some good practices from me. They've probably learned some negative things that they also don't want to do for their groups, but I think it's really valuable. And so I have sort of a piece of advice as well that I think has been really useful, and which is my colleague, Dr. Christine Dunham. So she and I are, peer, I would say we are peer mentors of one another. But one of the things that we have done is, and this kind of, I guess it goes with mentoring, but it relates back to the Nature Award for mentoring. So getting recognized for things like mentoring, again, it really is not woven into the thread very often. There are more and more sort of recognition and awards for mentoring, but nominating someone for an award takes a lot of time and energy as well. Often you have to collect letters, all that. So what Christine and I have done is we have kind of made ourselves nomination buddies. So Allison mentioned I was, at least in part, invited to lead this discussion today, in part because I won the Nature Award for Mentoring in Science. Christine Dunham nominated me for this award. I nominated her for the American Society of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, or ASB&B Young Investigator Award, which she won. And then in 2022, we both nominated one another to be fellows of the American Society of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology. And it was really cool. We were both elected. So this strategy of having a colleague who we kind of have partnered up to nominate one another for awards and for recognition has really worked well for us, because these things take time and energy. And I find that often there's one person who's doing a lot of the nominating, and that person then often doesn't get recognized. So this is just sort of a piece of advice I have. I'm not sure it necessarily falls into the mentor category, but it relates to this award. And so with that, I want to just acknowledge, people who have influenced me and, built my mentoring strategy along the way, people who have supported my mental health as I've, worked through this. And I would, one of the things I like to just end on is, say that until there is a culture shift, until we have offices of mentorship within, our universities, the award is typically going to be the success of our mentees. And, most of us thrive on this, and that's why we do it. That's why you guys, took a little time to come and listen to me talk about this topic today. But a little positive reinforcement never hurts. So what I ask people to do now, and we've got a few more minutes, is just take out your phone, or you guys are all on your computer because you're listening to Zoom, me on Teams. Think of someone who's been critical to your success and send them a quick email or text and just thank them for their support. And I'm going to take a minute to do that myself. So hopefully each of you who are listening can take a minute to do that. And then I'll be happy to just answer any questions, or if anybody has any thoughts or comments, happy to hear them. Seems like our timing is about right, because I think breakfast is starting soon. Right. Well, hopefully that at least gave everyone a minute to get started on their text or email. And if you have a few minutes during the day, you can finish it if you didn't get a chance to finish. I sent a text to my friend Christine and just said, thanks so much for your help along the way, and I really appreciate it. She'll probably wonder if I'm crazy or, something's going on. But I just think this is, every once in a while, I'll get a text or an update from someone I worked with over the years. And I think that really, it reinforces what we're doing, and that mentoring is important, and that supporting people is super important. And so I've already shared these slides with Allison, and she can share them with you. There's a number of links and resources to some of the reports that I mentioned, as well as a number of podcasts that I really like about finding a mentor and there's lots of resources out there. So I really encourage you guys, if you're interested, to consider, consider listening to some